Hi, my name is Andrew Burhans. It's about 9 a.m. right now, and I just finished piano class. All of the music majors at Shepherd are required to take 4 semesters of class piano. So we do a variety of things in class, from basic harmonization exercises to reading lead sheets to sight reading, transposition, and we also work on repertoire pieces.
My name is Jared Cook. I'm a second-year graduate student in organ performance here at the Shepherd School. And it's a little bit past 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm here practicing. We've got a concert in a couple of days, so I'm just here kind of fine-tuning, making sure everything is ready to go and that I can still remember how to play the organ.
I'm Maggie. I'm in Baker College. We're about to go to music history 321 Baroque music.
We're continuing with French harpsichord music.
I thought music history would be a really nice major, and it's been really interesting so far, and I'm really glad I'm taking it because I've never really been exposed to something like this before in high school.
I just exited from our class with Debbie Dickinson, where we worked on performance practice, different types of techniques to present yourself in the best light as a performer. So we start out each day by doing a couple different movement exercises, bending, different stretches and things, just to loosen up the body and really connect the breath to the body, enabling you to just perform with your whole body connected.
So my name is Braden Nutter. I am here at a classical guitar class elective. Once I heard about this class, it's like a 2-hour credit, and I was like, well, I know how to play guitar, and I don't know how to play classical, but I think it would be pretty cool to learn. And I think on top of that, just being a football player, it'd be a little cool break from just regular school. So it was a pretty obvious decision.
I'm a senior percussionist. I'm doing my recital preview. We have to give a sort of performance in less formal setting to make sure that we're ready to go for the real thing.
So this is now, you can start to see, oh, I could actually create some sort of dynamic shaping with that.
This is kind of our homeroom. As you've seen, we kind of spend most of our off time here either playing together or just hanging out, or there's a refrigerator over there. I mean, this is just kind of our sanctuary.
Certainly the most fulfilling things we do are the symphony concerts and our solo recitals. But being able to do extracurricular stuff, maybe go just hang out with people or do some sports with them, makes it more fulfilling to play music with them and hear what they have to say on the stage.
So it's almost 2:10 p.m., which means the start of our Shepherd Symphony Orchestra rehearsal. I'm currently unpacking. I took out one earring so that I can play my viola properly, and yeah, we're getting ready for a concert in a few weeks.
My job here is to make sure that the technical aspects of our opera productions go smoothly from A to Z. We go through and ring out all the possible problems that we could have and facilitate the most realistic experience that the students could get here that they'll experience in a professional setting.
We just finished chamber music coaching, and we're about to head up to the opera rehearsal soon. Right now, we're just rehearsing the orchestra without the singers. I play violin, so we're just kind of you know, making sure everything's up to par before we bring the singers into the mix.
So right now it's about 6:30 p.m. So we just got out of orchestra. I just had a rehearsal with a pianist because we, as the trumpet studio, have a recital tomorrow. It can leave you feeling a bit gassed sometimes, but after this, I have another rehearsal to get to, and then I'm doing a bit of student work. I'm going to be sort of monitoring from the box office of the new building, so it's a little pick-me-up to get myself through the rest of the day, and then on to a fun night.
My name is Robin Tazi. I'm from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. I'm a third-year master's student here studying with Mr. Cantor. And I just finished an opera rehearsal, and now I'm going to go get some music from the library. Yeah, and, keep at it.
Hi, I'm Willie Ye, and right now it's about 8 p.m. and we have the Woodwind Chamber concert.
Hello! Hello and welcome to this Owl Together session, a conversation with our new dean, Matthew Loden. My name is Alexandra Smither and I graduated from the opera school at Rice University Shepherd School of Music in 2016. I would like to remind the attendees tonight that all of you may post questions for Dean Loden in the chat and we will do our best to get to them. So without further ado, on behalf of the Shepherd community, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Dean Matthew Loden. Really, I should be saying welcome back to Dean Loden, who is both a native Houstonian and also served as Director of Admissions here at the Shepherd School from 2002 to 2007. Dean Loden was most recently CEO of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra and has held leadership positions with the Philadelphia Orchestra and the Aspen Music Festival, among others. In addition to his success as an administrator, Dean Loden is also an acclaimed violinist who has performed with several Broadway productions and top national orchestras, including as principal in the American Symphony Orchestra at Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall. So maybe we should do a duet. Dean Loden, thank you for joining us for this session. There have been many questions that came in, and I'm going to start with some that people may have asked.
Well, I just, I want to say thank you to you, Ali. There would be nothing more I would enjoy in life than doing a duet with you sometime. So we're going to have to put that on the calendar and figure out how to make that. That was your idea.
I won't forget.
Okay. But no, really, thank you for being here tonight and for hosting. And to everyone who's out there, this is a special time between homecoming and family weekend. So if one way or another you're involved with that as a parent or family member or current student, whomever you might be, we're so glad that you're here with us. And hopefully this will be a fun and enjoyable conversation. And particularly considering if you are actually here in Houston and you've come from somewhere else, we love to tell people that the weather that we're experiencing today is pretty much what it's always like here in Houston. Couldn't be more beautiful than what we've got going on, which is lovely. And before we jump into questions, and I spend a lot of time talking about ideas and things, I really do just want to acknowledge how special and wonderful it is to have Ali here with us. Ali, in everything that she does, represents what is best and bright about a Shepherd School of Music, Rice University education. She's gone on to do some really extraordinary things with her career, not only vocally, but what she does in the community, the way in which she uses her platform to make a difference in the world and to be of service is really important. And it's an important tenet for what we feel like musicians should be trained to do. So bravo, brava, Ali, and I'm ready whenever you are to get into this.
Thanks so much. I'm ready too. You're so sweet. I thought we could start with, could you talk a bit about your musical education, and especially how did that education inform your professional career and the perspective you bring to Rice as the Dean of Music?
It's a great question. I was lucky enough when I was in the 3rd grade going to West University Elementary School here in Houston, Texas, to be in the very first Suzuki violin program at a public school in Texas. And that meant that 3 times a week, instead of doing PE, I went for my group and private violin lessons, and I was hooked. I absolutely loved it. One thing led to another, and I really decided that I wanted to commit myself to doing whatever I could to become a violinist. And the things that I learned how to do as a performer are the things that have made such a difference in my life and all the other things that I've been able to do, either as a husband, as a father, as a professional living in different kinds of situations, having very different jobs within the music industry. It all comes back in my mind to the training that I initially received as a string quartet performer. When I was in high school, as a freshman, I was put into the senior string quartet ensemble, which was like a really awesome ensemble. And I was scared to death, and I was by far the weak member of the group. And what I don't believe it. Well, no, it's true. It was true. But what I learned from it was that when you show up to something prepared, and when you show up ready not only to listen to what it is that you're doing, what you're producing, but what everyone else is doing as well, and when you do it in real time, the skills that you have to develop in order to navigate playing in a string quartet, so applicable to everything else that happens in life. Ali, you know, you can be a wonderful, incredible center stage soprano, but if you don't have a band around you, or if you don't have some kind of then you're singing in the dark. So I would say that's what my training has been about, and what it's how it's really informed a lot of the way that I move through the world.
Wow, totally. No, it's true. There's so much around music making that informs music making, but isn't music making, but also is. So I guess that brings me to the next thing I would love to talk to you about, which is thinking about music making and the things that go around it. What about that attracted you to being new dean of the Shepherd School of Music, and what you want to bring to that role?
Well, for about the last decade, with my work at the Philadelphia Orchestra and then most recently at the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, I've begun looking at it as if I've been in a position with those ensembles of sort of being the end user of a wonderful group of talented musicians who have been educated somewhere, and they've all come together into these orchestras. And I've seen how unbelievably talented musicians are in this day and age from a technical standpoint, and from a wide-ranging musical standpoint, to have a sense of the history of the works that we're performing, and to have such a passionate love for actually bringing this music to different communities. That's really exciting. What for me, though, became even more exciting was the idea of being able to help influence what the training of the next generation would be. To come back to Houston, to come to an extraordinary place like the Shepherd School at Rice, and to be able to have really deep, thoughtful conversations about what are we teaching ourselves? What are the fundamentals that we really have to understand as performers and as composers and musicologists and people who live in this world of music? What is our responsibility to each other, and what's our responsibility to the history of this music? And so being able to take whatever it is that I might have learned out there in the industry world and bring it back here to Rice, and to help think about the best pathway forward for all of this, that's deeply, wonderfully intriguing, and I'm super psyched to be here.
Yeah. So I think one thing that you said really got my mind wheels turning, which is that balance of appreciating the history and uplifting it and letting it inform us, but also moving forward, and like creating new things and challenging things. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your perspective on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's music and classical, let's say classical Western art music in North America comes from an incredibly rich tradition, but it also comes from a place of really wanting to, and if you imagine the late 1800s, when America in particular was really moving through its industrialization and coming into its primacy. Everyone in America wanted to be what was wonderful and magical about Europe. They wanted to bring it over here and they wanted to start it new. And we managed to create some incredible ensembles and opera houses in this wonderful industry of classical music in America, but we also put an awful lot of baggage around it. We put a lot of expectations, a lot of behaviors, a lot of societal kinds of attachments that often can distract from what the music actually is and what it's trying to say, or what the motivation for the composer actually was when they initially sat down and wrote it. But when Beethoven wrote the Eroica Symphony, he was not remotely interested in having people sit very quietly in a concert hall where it was dark in a plush seat and just enjoy it. Like, he wanted people to actually have an experience. So when I think about the music of the future as it relates to our responsibility for taking care of the music of the past, I always think that there's a way that we can continue to celebrate and perform the extraordinary works that we do so well and we know and we love so much, while also mashing it up with a different kind of experience, either culturally in the concert hall. Maybe we find ways to relax the way, sort of the unspoken rules of the house. Mm-hmm. Maybe we find different ways for the musicians on stage to actually make sure they break down that fourth wall and they talk to the audience, because they actually are all really smart people and capable of talking. Maybe it's finding completely non-classical music or musicians that you can mash up with things that might be more formal, that are more of our tradition, and create something new that's unexpected and different and forward-leaning. So I think that we stand at an incredible time in the history of the world, where never before have we had such immediate access to so much extraordinary music on our phones. And I think that we're seeing a lot of cool things come as a result of that, and it's going to be an exciting future.
Wow, that's so great. I'm excited. I think when we're thinking about new futures, the perfect and unexpected example was the pandemic, and how people adapted and the impact it had on performing arts and artists. So I guess coming out of this pandemic and looking at our field after the pandemic, what do you see as the greatest challenges for the field and also for the Shepherd School?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the arts and culture sector was devastated by the pandemic, like everywhere. And various countries had different ways of dealing with and valuing their arts industries. Here in America, while there has been some support for arts and culture from federal and local governments, it sometimes has been slow in coming because there were lots of other people to take care of, and a lot of people have been hurting. So I think the more that we really acknowledge what we've all been through, the easier it will be to move on to whatever the next thing is. Mm-hmm. I think that right now our fears, I read this the other day, I can't remember what it was, but someone wrote that, coming out of the pandemic, that our fears have been amplified and our dreams have been diminished. And I think that's a really accurate summation of where a lot of people are right now, that there's more to be afraid of, right? You walk outside, and is someone wearing a mask or not wearing a mask? And what does that mean politically? And are you safe as a result? And that's a different world to live in. But the thing that our job is, as musicians, as artists, as communicators, is to find ways to inspire past that and to remind people that we have much more that is part of what can unify us than the easy sort of things that we can point at that make us so different. So when I think about what the opportunities are coming out of the pandemic, it is to recalibrate the things that we value. It's to return to a kind of essential appreciation for what you can actually do with your own hands and your own voice and your own abilities and your natural talent. To be able to go anywhere in the world and open up a clarinet case and stand on a street corner and play the clarinet beautifully, that brings people together. And that puts people into a different place. It's magic, right? We've all experienced it. And so the more that we can make sure that coming out of the pandemic, we support those opportunities, that students and faculty and performers and patrons and appreciators continue to say that, you know what, the live music experience where someone is actually sharing a part of themselves with me is something that I never want to lose. And I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So I don't know if you know, but I'm a bit of a fan because I know you worked on that project with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra called Messiah Complex, which I think is a perfect example of what you were just talking about, which is taking these things we love and transforming them and inviting new people in. So for those of you who didn't hear about this, Toronto Symphony Orchestra with Against the Grain Theatre, which is one of my home companies who I love dearly, did a project called Messiah/Complex, where they completely redid the Messiah with singers across Canada from all different affinity groups in different languages. It was really fantastic. So knowing you were a part of that, I was wondering how did that project come to be? How do you feel about it? And as a Canadian, how do you feel about the Canadian music scene? And what do you think US organizations can learn from it, or vice versa?
Wow. Okay, that's like 6 questions.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm going to do my best to answer, and if I drop one,
I'll call you back.
You can call me back, please. So the project came together as many of these kinds of things do, very serendipitously. We knew that we wanted to work with Joel Ivany at Against the Grain. We also knew that we were in the middle of the early days of the pandemic. Everything was completely shut down. No one was allowed to be together. We were putting together a whole bunch of wonderful individual Zoom performances. We had Appalachian Spring actually happen with individual musicians playing at home in their living rooms, and then pasted it all together. But it was an online, not in-person experience. And we had the chance in September, 2 Septembers ago, the very first thing that we did was to record the Messiah. And we basically went to a concert hall, and the Toronto Symphony Orchestra recorded the soundtrack for this incredible project. And Joel had sketched out his idea, which was during the pandemic, in spite of the pandemic, we're going to fly all over Canada, and we're going to work with Inuit and Native people, and we are going to actually ask them to sing these famous arias in their own language and see what it actually does to the art form if you mix it up that way. And so what can sometimes be a very familiar, maybe over familiar kind of experience of hearing the Hallelujah Chorus or one of the arias, all of a sudden is transformed into something else when you hear it in a different language that's unexpected, that's Arabic, you know? And so I think that what we gained from it was an understanding that there is a huge hunger out there in the world to see this kind of work happen. And we feel even more like there's a responsibility when we're working with students to point out that it doesn't always have to be the way it's been. But if it's different from the way that it's been, it doesn't mean that you also have to completely disregard all the extraordinary things that have led to this moment, right? And you know probably better than anyone that there really there's the right way to sing and there's the wrong way to sing based on the kind of art that you are trying to produce, right? And the technical aspect of what you actually have to learn, right? The physical and the emotional discipline that you have to sing, you always have to pay attention to. And I think that at the Shepherd School, those kinds of fundamentals are really important to us. And we're going to keep doing it, even if we fold on a Messiah complex on top of that feels really unusual and different and special.
Yeah, I always say that, solid foundations open you up to new possibilities. So it's a shame if you don't use them to think of new things. And I think a lot of the time an argument for not engaging in, I don't know, transformative change is that the field doesn't want it. But I think projects like Messiah Complex show that the field absolutely wants it. And it makes sense on so many different levels. So I guess this actually brings up something that's really dear to my heart, because I was part of the group that started organizing around it, which is equity at the Shepherd School. And you now have Muse, the Musicians United for, I almost said Musicians Excited because I'm excited about it. The Musicians United for Social Equality task force, which is fantastic. And thank you guys for taking that on. So I guess my question with this would be, what do you see as the role of this group at Shepherd going forward? And how are you going to make, some people say diversity inclusion, I say racial justice, part of the fabric of the school?
Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is make sure that I'm not actually the one doing it. Which is why the task force exists. This has to be a collective effort, and it has to be something that the entire culture of the Shepherd School in Rice comes to together, with many different opportunities for a lot of different voices and perspectives to be heard. And so I applaud my predecessor, Dean Bob Yakovich, and the folks that initially put this task force together, in particular, Jeffrey Scott and Kurt Stallman. It is a moment for people at the Shepherd School to evaluate what we're doing, to help keep us in line and pay attention, to raise their hands every once in a while and to know that they're going to be heard. But even more wonderfully, we've created a series where online people can engage with all kinds of incredible artists that Muse is able to bring to the forefront for students or for the entire public. And that's wonderful, because there's a lot that we can all learn from that. But it's just the beginning, right? And so I think the more we create a kind of expectation that there is going to be attention and respect and resources put towards actually changing whatever that change might be, I think, like I've said before, we'll get there eventually. For some organizations, it can happen overnight. I tend to think that is often a little bit too performative for my taste. I would much rather get it right and do it quickly and with ambition and energy. But it also has to be something that's going to stick, and that sometimes takes a while to figure out.
Yeah, digging deep is really important. All those things you said, listening, resources, that's what builds that foundation for transformative change. So I'm excited to hear about that and keep cheering you on while you do that work. And I think it's really important because Houston is such a diverse city, and you know that, you're a native Houstonian. So what are you most excited about being back in your hometown?
The Tex-Mex.
Yes.
Oh, I missed it so much. I'm sorry. I love Canada, but Toronto does not really know how to do it the same way.
I won't eat Tex-Mex outside of Texas, so I feel you.
Exactly. No, growing up here, when you're in any kind of environment, you think that environment is normal, right? And growing up here, and I went to the High School for Performing and Visual Arts, and the things that I did before the age of 18 as a musician and as a person in Houston, it never occurred to me that like the rest of the world didn't actually have that opportunity, right? Or wasn't wired that way. And so to come back to town and to see an even more explosive series of everything from, the food, which is really awesome, but like the things that are happening artistically, the things, the visual arts in Houston have always been incredibly strong, but they are just in an ascendancy that's wonderful. Everything from the Alley Theater to the Houston Grand Opera, where we have a wonderful series of partnerships, to the Houston Symphony, where we have lots of partnerships. All of those anchor organizations are deeply embedded in the community and are really committed to continuing to recognize the diversity of Houston and to make both their programming and their expectations reflect that. And so that's an incredible like crucible to be a part of. And so how the Shepherd School helps to feed that energy and helps to actually find new ways of creating art, both art that is generated from ourselves and from our buildings and from our infrastructure, but also art that comes from outside from these other places. Here on campus, even with like the Moody Center across the way from us, there's so many points of connectivity that I'm really excited about in Houston, and you don't get that anywhere else in the world. I mean, certainly there are arts districts and other places that are really vibrant and doing wonderful things, but there is something special about being here, and I think there's an openness and an entrepreneurial spirit in the arts that serves people very, very well here.
Yeah, and I think you see that from all the Shepherd graduates who choose to stay in Houston and embed themselves in so many different organizations across town, if not in many at the same time. I'm going to remind all our lovely attendees tonight that this is your opportunity to ask Dean Loden some questions directly. So if you would like to pop some into the Q&A chat, otherwise I'm just going to keep asking him whatever I think of. So please don't feel shy, put your questions in the chat and we will answer them. Well, Dean Loden will answer them, not me. So I think going off of what you just said, first I want to know, do you have a favorite Tex-Mex restaurant? Or order?
I do, but I'm gonna run the route that I hear a lot of conductors run whenever someone asks them, who's your favorite composer? The answer is it's whatever's in front of me at the time. So I love a variety, and I'm not gonna commit myself further than that.
Okay, well, since you won't commit to that, do you have a favorite composer?
Oh, I should have known. I was going to open up that window.
Because you can't use that question twice. You can't use that answer twice.
So okay, well, here's the other answer. It depends on my mood, right? But I will say it's interesting. I spend so much of my life in the orchestral world, both with like large symphony orchestras, but also in the opera world of Rosenkavalier or late Verdi, where there's a lot of complexity and a lot of sound, and I find that like incredibly, it makes everything work for me. But often I find myself at the end of a long day, having heard a whole bunch of wonderful music in my day job, wanting to go back to the basics. So I really enjoy Bach on a keyboard. So it could be Glenn Gould doing the Goldbergs, or Jeremy Dank doing the Goldbergs, or Leinhardt doing a French suite. I mean, it runs the gamut. But the purity of a single instrument making a gesture towards complexity, I love. I love the way that works.
Totally.
Is that an okay answer?
That's a great answer, especially considering you weren't planning on answering that question. So I appreciate you jumping in. We do have a question in our chat from Linda. Hi, Linda, who would like to know, how do the students interact with the community, specifically students K through 12? What kind of opportunities are there? How do you, because we all know that becomes a huge part of a musician's life, especially after school, is also teaching. So how do we prepare Shepherd School students for that?
So it's a great question, and it's a really important one. What is wonderful about the programs, plural, that we have in place now is that the vast majority of them are student-led and student-motivated. So we do have some formal programs that help to bring the students out into schools, and conversely bring students in to hear our music. But we also have this huge interest from the Shepherd School students themselves. They're hungry to go out and to share their music and to have an experience, because they remember what it was like the first time they saw a bassoon, which is a crazy, weird instrument that makes a really crazy, beautiful sound. But the first time that you're 3 feet away from one in a school gymnasium, it can change your life in all kinds of different ways, right? And so we do have a number of programs. One of the things that I hope to do early in my tenure here is to continue to evaluate what are those programs and how effectively are they actually moving out into the community. Oftentimes, because we're so passionate about loving what we do, we think that everyone should have an opportunity to experience what we do and to listen to the music of the great Western canon. And the reality is not everyone wants that. Not everyone needs it in their neighborhood. And so finding ways that we can connect with different neighborhoods, with different communities that want to connect with us, and figure out by listening, what is it that you actually think we could do together could be really interesting. Certainly, I think it's wonderful for anyone to hear an early Beethoven string quartet performed live. But there might also be some other kind of music that we could hear performed live at the same time that could be completely different from what we've experienced. And finding ways to put those communities together through music, I think, is going to be something that I hope we can explore together at the Shepherd School.
That's really exciting. Being a good neighbor first. That's what's most important.
Yeah.
We have another question from the chat, which is, how do you plan to, and maybe this is selfishly, I'm very excited about this one. How do you plan to engage with alumni? What are you excited about doing at the Shepherd School with the amazing alumni? Not speaking about myself.
Well, Rice University, I saw a statistic just the other day. There's only 60,000 alumni at all of Rice University, period, which is a relatively small number compared to a lot of other exceptional universities. And when you look at the number of alumni that actually come specifically from the Shepherd School, which has been alive for about 45 years, it's relatively small, right? So I think that there's ample opportunity for us to connect with the Shepherd alums as much as possible, to make sure that they know all about the concerts and that they can come through the doors and always feel welcome. There's also, would be wonderful if we could find performance opportunities, being able to celebrate the success, to kind of come back and to give back to the place that actually helped to launch careers is really important. And the current students really look up to and appreciate having the opportunity to actually engage with people that are out there doing the work right now in the field. So, the doors are open. More than that, I don't currently have a specific alumni plan, other than to say that we don't ever want to lose sight of where you are and where you think we should be going, because oftentimes the folks that have been out there for a few years doing the work have really great ideas about what we can bring back and do here differently.
That's a fantastic answer, and actually brings us perfectly to our next question, which is from Sasha Cook, who I'm a big fan of. Fantastic. Oh. My God. And she says, I imagine there are unforeseen challenges that come with becoming a dean following a pandemic. What are some of those challenges that you didn't anticipate? And also conversely, what are some silver linings?
Typical, really super smart question from Sasha. Thank you. And hello, it's great to hear from you. I'm glad you're out there. The challenges that we all experienced, I think that seeing the pandemic coming, we all intellectually could understand what it would mean to close concert halls, to close teaching studios, to move what is a very physical way of learning and teaching, to move that online. We knew in our heads, okay, well, we don't have a choice. We have to do this. We have to make the best of it. We have to find a way. We have to find these moments that we can work towards where we know that we're not stagnant. What I think was unexpected for many of us was just the emotional toll that actually has taken. For people who are hardwired to actually practice something intensely for 4 or 5 or 6 hours a day and passionately live in a world of the creator, to not be able to do that, or to only be doing it for yourself in a closet, and not be able to share or to hear the response of an audience, or to work with colleagues to figure out how you can make a creation better, that's deeply troubling. So I think those kinds of challenges, no one could really have fully understood. You can kind of predict it, but until you're really living it and feeling it. But I think as a result of that, it's kind of a little bit of what I was saying before. As a result of many people having gone through that experience. I think both musicians and creative types, period, and the people that love what we do have an even more passionate approach to consuming that product. And I have spoken to so many people who are so tired of hearing me say, you know, we can only open up the house to 50%, right? Because they know that they want to have a full house, and they know that not everybody who wants to be there is going to be able to get in. So I think there is going to continue to be a huge untapped demand for people to come together, to congregate together, and to do something that you can really only do in a concert hall, which is to sit down with strangers and to experience some performance. And you experience it as an individual, right? You obviously, you take it in, you're listening, you're looking, you're feeling it however you feel it. And for some people, it reminds them of their first girlfriend in junior high school. And for other people, it reminds them of, I don't know, some other thing. But you're on this journey by yourself, but you're doing it with 1,000 other people at the same time. And there's a kind of communal connection that comes from that experience that I think we're all really, really hungry for. And so the more that we can find ways to amplify that experience, to talk about it, to remind people of what it feels like, then I think we'll be on an ascendancy. And I think that's going to continue to be a real desire for the thing that we do. And that's what you want, right? Everybody wants to be wanted. And I think the Shepherd School graduates are always going to be wanted.
Fabulous. I can actually confirm that feeling because my first orchestra concert since I got back was the Shepherd School Orchestra, sounding as amazing as ever. And the synergy in the room was palpable. It was so, so exciting and emotional and moving. So congratulations on that. Our next question is from Linda, who's wondering, how can we make our graduates, this one hits home, more employable as the job market narrows for classical musicians? What things can we do now when they're in school to help them once they leave school?
I would suggest that we find ways to expand the job market. You know, I think that there are opportunities for us to recognize that when you graduate with a kind of talent and ability from a school, and there's many wonderful schools of music out there. Obviously, I'm super biased about the Shepherd School, but there is sometimes this feeling that there's a narrow path, right, where you're either going to get into the opera company, or you're going to get into the orchestra, or you're going to get a teaching position, and that's an anchor for you. And that's certainly true, and those jobs are very competitive and they're very difficult to get. But there's also so many incredible things that are happening that are entrepreneurial. I mean, Ali, I would even look at what you're doing with Esperanza Spalding and Wayne Shorter. I mean, you know, being able to put stuff together that has never been put together before, and find ways to be business school about it, to monetize those experiences. That's what people want. People want something that's new and fresh and revitalized. And I think that there are ways that we can help our students to do that. So another way of answering the question sort of speaks back to what I said previously, which is that at the end of the day, fundamentally, you have to learn the craft of your art form. You just have to study it. You have to put yourself in the practice room. You have to figure it out. And it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. There's no shortcuts. And you have to know what it feels like, if you're a performer, to be doing it on your own without a safety net. That's a really important learn. That doesn't mean it's dangerous, and doesn't mean that we always want to create a safe environment for people. But you have to find a way to be better than you think you can be as a performer, and as a composer, musicologist, researcher, whatever it is that you're doing, you always want to be better. And I think that in the way that we look at where jobs are out there for musicians, part of being better is sometimes not always expecting that you're going to do exactly the same thing that happened a few years ago, right, to the previous generation. That's part of the change. That's part of where there's actually excitement and growth and opportunity. There are all kinds of orchestras that are starting, right? There's lots of smaller ensembles that are very nimble and are able to do all kinds of incredible work within their communities. And oftentimes they do it in a way that's much more energizing and exciting than some of the more established anchor organizations. There's room for all of it. I will tell you quite frankly, I would much rather hear one of the top 5 orchestras in the world do Mahler's Ninth Symphony than I would necessarily want to hear, I don't know, something else. But like there's a place for those traditional kinds of organizations. Around that, boy, is there ever a place for different kinds of ensembles doing really great work. So again, I think the audience is out there. How we help our students recognize that, how we help them master what it is that they're here to do at the Shepherd School and push it all together, and then be supportive once they're out of our comforting arms and into the real world as it is. All of those things have to come together, and it's a process and a journey.
Awesome. So I guess our next question comes from Joan, who would like to know, how do you plan to engage with the Shepherd Society? That's more difficult to say than I anticipated. With the Shepherd Society, and involve them more, and also your other patrons?
It's a great question. So for those of you that might not know, the Shepherd Society is really our core group of donors and patrons who help immeasurably in supporting everything from merit awards and music scholarships to being our ambassadors and bringing friends to performances. And I think one of the ways that we can expand involvement in that is by putting resource and effort behind it. Obviously, but it's also in making sure that we have a unified sense of what it is that we want to be saying about the Shepherd School, and what it is that collectively we feel like we can represent that's exciting and is a part of our entire region and beyond. So stay tuned for exactly what we do around an expansion of the Shepherd Society. I think there's a wonderful byproduct of involvement that happens when you're part of something that is really exciting. When people start to talk about what it was like to go to a performance at the Shepherd School, what it was like to actually go to a lecture and have their mind completely blown away by what they learned about X, Y, and Z. All of those things eventually create a kind of critical mass of wonderfulness. And my intention is to certainly do whatever I can to help encourage those opportunities. And I think that how the Shepherd Society and other maybe loyalty groups and affinity groups for the Shepherd School and Rice University, how they grow, I think will be a natural outcome of us doing our jobs really well.
I think that's great. I'm still in touch with my Shepherd Society donors, and they're
That's
like
awesome.
my second set of grandparents. I love them so much. So our next question, near and dear to my heart, talks about the individual responsibility for justice in each of us. So our person, their name's not on there, but they would like to know, what are Muse's plans beyond the current initiatives to address individual biases that students or faculty or anyone in the building may have in terms of racial or gender or disability identities? And
well, so I think it's important to differentiate between sort of the role of Muse and what Rice University generally has is a very clear set of principles and expectations and guidelines for exactly what you're talking about. And there's a kind of code of ethics at Rice that runs the gamut from the honor code to make sure that you honestly take a test and that you're honest about it, to how are you actually looking at the kinds of people that you're hiring? What are the pools that you're pulling from? Have you taken a moment to actually think about if you are working within the same network that you've always worked in, or if you have actually taken the initiative to move slightly beyond that, and then what does that look like? So the individual accountability and responsibility for paying attention to how one moves through Rice University and the Shepherd School, that accountability is absolutely there. It's part of what's expected. It's part of what's spelled out, and it's part of my role and responsibility to make sure that the faculty help to encourage that with the students. And that conversely, the students feel like they're in a place where they're heard and where they're understood and where there's not any kind of comfort with a different way of doing things other than what I just described.
That makes me very excited to hear you say that. So thank you. We have one last question for tonight. And this one brings me back because I remember when Jeffrey Scott called me to tell me I got into Rice and I screamed and dropped the phone. So thanks for sticking with me, Jeffrey. So this one goes out to, if there is a prospective student watching this right now, why would you say that they should come to the Shepherd School of Music at Rice University?
I think that there are a lot of places in the world where you can go to learn how to be a musician. And I think that's great. There should be a lot of places. I think there is no other place in the world like the Shepherd School that is part of a community like Rice, part of a city like Houston, part of a culture of extraordinary, even extreme excellence, wrapped in a kind of Texas warmth and kindness, and even sometimes a little bit of wonderful humility. And having all of that in one place where so many people are 100% committed to the student experience and all that that means, right? Much more than just executing your lesson really successfully on a weekly basis. But like, what are you doing in your residential college that's really cool? What are you doing that has nothing to do with music at all, but is really important to who you are as a person? I think finding a place like the Shepherd School, if I were a prospective student all over again, boy, I'd be blown away at just how open and present the opportunities to explore and to engage my own sort of curiosity would be. So I certainly. Again, there's a lot of great places out there, and my job is to be completely prejudiced about the Shepherd School, but I don't have any compunction at all about saying to prospective students, this is definitely a place that you should really look at, and I hope you do.
I absolutely agree. So I know I said that was the last question, but I'm gonna sneak one more in.
The bonus round.
The bonus round, right? Rapid fire. So not rapid fire. What is an upcoming project or performance at the Shepherd School that you are excited about and you would like people to come to?
Well, I'm actually, as soon as I get off the line with you, I'm going to go downstairs to the rest of the contemporary ensemble performance that's happening right now. So that's the first thing that I'm excited about. And beyond that, I really am going to say the same thing that I said before, which there are over 400 things that happen each semester, concerts and performances and lectures that happen each semester. So I am going to resist picking one. I will say that, as always, the large ensemble performances that we have, everything from the symphony orchestra to the chamber orchestra to the opera programs, those are always just amazing. Just because of the visceral nature of what those things are. But we also have individual student recitals that are happening all the time. We have incredible organ recitals and performances with Collegium and otherwise that happen. I think that if you are remotely interested in the musical arts, go to our website, go to the Shepherd School website. We have a very active site that lists everything that's going on, and pick something and you can't go wrong.
Fabulous. I think that is a perfect place to end. So thank you, Dean Loden, again for taking this time to introduce yourself and to answer such wonderful questions. And thank you, everybody. You are part of our Shepherd School community, and we were so happy to have you attend this evening's session. I hope you all have a really good night. Thank you again.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Ali, so much.